Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum. Your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines, today being the 21st day of May 2025. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. My name is Alphonce Ouma, and let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the Daily Nation this morning. Nurses no one wants. Workers tossed between counties and Afia House. Now, they put their lives on the line to help patients in isolation wards likened to death chambers during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. 5 years later, the medics are enduring months without pay and the life of penury, plunging some into depression and suicide. Why have authorities been so mean on them? That story is augmented for you on page 2, 3, and 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 12, corruption case. Natembea freed but barred from county office. That story is on page 12. On page 6 of the Daily Nation this morning, 25,000 promoted teachers to wait longer for parks as standoff persists. That story is beefed up for you on page 6. On page 14, new City Hall rules to limit number of matatus per route. Governor Johnson Sakaja's administration proposes sweeping matatu reforms amid uproar from operators. That story is on page 14 for you this morning. And on page 5, outrage as public schools run on empty. Institutions forced to scale down operations after government failed to wire capitation money. Day high schools most affected by cash crunch as they fully rely on government funding. So 70% is the percentage of learners who attend day secondary schools that are struggling the most. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Let's take a look at page 2 now. The medics that Kenya forgot because 4.2 billion shillings is quote-unquote too costly. Now, Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale has said the ministry does not have 4.2 billion shillings to address the 5-year standoff of over 8,571 healthcare workers deployed during the COVID-19 pandemic. 5 years later, they have endured empty promises, going for months without pay, the little that is left after statutory deductions. Now, what pains them most is that 5 years after sacrifices, the government's promises of permanent employment remain unfulfilled. All right. You have their stories beefed up here for you, a couple of them. And they say we work on contract with half pay and no allowance. You want to catch up with more insights on page 2, page 3, and page 3 this morning. On page 4, we continue again with the story of the nurses who will hear us. After putting their lives on the line, neglected medics are now driven to suicide. We fought for the nation during a pandemic, but we have no one to fight for us, is what they say. Bureaucratic limbo persists as governors disown responsibility, say workers belong to the government. Transparency. Why is the story being done? The story was written to shed light on the ongoing struggles faced by healthcare workers in Kenya, particularly nurses employed under the Universal Health Coverage Program and medical interns amidst a backdrop of global health crisis, suicide in healthcare workers. Now, the story aims to amplify the voices of those who are at the forefront of the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting the immense sacrifices they made and the severe challenges they continue to endure, from inadequate pay and lack of protective equipment to mental health crisis and an uncertain future. On page 5 this morning, public schools running on empty. Now, school principals say learning and extracurricular activities have been affected by lack of funds. Day secondary schools most affected by cash crunch as they fully rely on the funds from the government. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Let's take a look at page 6. Stalemate over 25,000 frozen tutors promotions. Now, data presented by TSC shows five ethnic groups secured over 2/3 of all promotions. TSC on the spot over controversial process amid accusations of irregularities. 5,291 is the number of teachers who were promoted despite serving in their current job grades for less than 6 months. That story is augmented for you on page 6. On page 7 this morning, Ruto borrows 1.4 trillion shillings, breaking campaign promise. Now, Treasury official reveals that country has already overshot domestic borrowing target. The president and his allies had accused his predecessor of going on a borrowing spree. Now, President William Ruto had borrowed at least 1.4 trillion as at December 31st, 2024, breaking his own promise to slow down on loans even as the debt burden eased slightly. Data from the Central Bank of Kenya CBK shows that as at December 31st, 2022, 3 months after President Ruto took office, the country's debt stock stood at 8.6 trillion, which represented 67.8% of gross domestic product GDP. It included 4.288 trillion in domestic borrowing and 4.29 trillion in foreign financing. As at December 31st, 2024, the 2025 medium-term debt management strategy shows that the country's public debt stood at 10.6 trillion. This represented 63% of GDP against the benchmark debt threshold of 55%. The debt trillion includes 5.2 trillion in domestic loans and 5.4 trillion in loans from the foreign markets. Kenya's appetite for borrowing has led to a soaring debt stock, with an international credit rating agencies raising doubts on the country's ability to manage the repayment. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. Let's move on and take a look at page 8. Mukuru residents, we now have houses with water, toilet, and gas. Majority of the beneficiaries who received their keys have been living in makeshift iron sheet houses. Nairobi slum dwellers thrilled as President Ruto hands over the keys to 1,080 units. You want to catch up with that on page 8. Let's move on and take a look at more stories here on The Nation on page 12. Graft case, Natembea out on 500,000 bail. Governor denies charges. Mention will be on June 3rd, but the court has barred him from county office or leaving Kenya for 60 days. Now, Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembea has been freed on cash bail of 500,000 shillings after denying graft-related charges. Milimani Anti-Corruption Court Magistrate Charles Ondieki ordered the governor to deposit the amount in court and get 2 contact people as part of the conditions for his release. Mr. Natembea has been barred from accessing his office in Kitale for 60 days after the prosecution alleged that he was likely to interfere with the witnesses and exhibits. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. Let's move on and take a look at page 14. New City Hall rules to limit number of matatus per route. The new laws are aimed at improving efficiency and easing congestion in the city. Nairobi City County government proposes sweeping matatu reforms amid uproar from operators. Now, City Hall has proposed sweeping regulations aimed at streamlining the matatu industry in Nairobi by limiting the number of vehicles per route, enforcing cashless payments, and regulating bus fares. Under the new regulations, the Nairobi City County Executive Committee member CEC for Public Transport and Mobility will have the authority to determine the number of operating permits issued for each route. That story is beefed up for you on page 14. Let's move on and take a look at page 16, that is. A journalist who gave African stories dignity. He passed away on May 2nd, 2025 in London following surgery. Nicholas Mark Koch was one of the most distinguished and principled journalists to work in Africa. Now, on page 16 is a tragic story again of a Catholic priest who was murdered amid secrecy, or after hosting the former DP. Now, the last moments of murdered priest amid secrecy by church. Now, a priest, a housekeeper, and a close friend of the late Father John Maina, who have been questioned by detectives and as investigations into the mysterious murder of the Catholic cleric intensify. Meanwhile, chilling details about his final movements have to emerge. Father Peninah, who served at Iguamiti Catholic Parish in Nyandarua County, was found dead on the morning of Thursday, May 15th. His body was discovered by passerby at Kikopey along the busy Nairobi-Nakuru highway, nearly 50 kilometers from his parish. Homicide detectives from Nairobi have taken over the case, which remains shrouded in secrecy. A post-mortem examination was conducted on Monday at Pope Benedict Hospital in Nyahururu by Dr. Titus Ngulungu, but the findings have not been made public. That story is briefed up for you on page 16. Let's take a look at the expert opinion. Cross-border solidarity is a threat to repressive regimes. They are not afraid of foreigners. They are afraid of their own people seeing us stand in solidarity. They are afraid of Tanzanians waking up and realizing they are not alone. Those are sentiments by activist Hanifa Adan following her deportation just the other day. Now, let's move on and take a look at the DN2 article for the motoring enthusiasts. Unused engine oil goes bad. That is all you have on the DN2 motoring article this morning, and you will catch up with more insights on that on the article itself, beefed up for you on the Daily Nation this morning. Let's take a look at county news. Why Lamu anti-terrorism operation is far from over. Fresh raids by insurgents put war-weary residents on edge. Commander Kuto acknowledges Al-Shabaab threat but vows 23. This is despite 700 million shillings being pumped into the project, sparking accusations of misuse of public funds. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 21. Briefly, in Nairobi County this morning, hawkers invade Mukuru pedestrian paths. Now, residents of Catherine Ndereba Road in Mukuru Kwanjenga slum in Embakasi South have complained about an invasion of hawkers. They have asked the authorities to restore order since pedestrian paths have been taken over by traders. Let's move on and take a look at world news now. Israel kills dozens in Gaza as criticism grows. Israel's military says it allowed 5 aid trucks into Gaza after months of blockade. A new round of ceasefire talks between Hamas and Israel is on in Doha. Briefly, in Khartoum, Burhan names new Sudan Prime Minister. Now, Sudan's Transitional Sovereign Council Chairman Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has appointed Camille Idris as Prime Minister. Idris' appointment comes nearly 3 weeks after Burhan named Dafala al-Hajj Ali the acting Prime Minister and Cabinet Affairs Minister. In Washington, Russia-Ukraine ready for talks. Donald Trump said after his call with President Vladimir Putin that Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations for a ceasefire, but the Kremlin said the process would take time, and the US president indicated he is not ready to join Europe with fresh sanctions to pressure Moscow. Now, in DR Congo, Congo's sick life hangs between war and survival. In the hills of eastern DRC Congo, the town of Sek bears the jagged outlines of war and endurance. Once a quiet transit hub just 27 kilometers west of Goma, Sake has become a symbol of unraveling and a strategic foothold in the surgence of the M23 rebel group. Now, let's take a look at business news. CA marks 6 billion shillings to boost TV and courier services. This is a TV viewership and radio listenership declines. Now, postal and carrier subsectors will get the biggest share of funds at 3.1 billion shillings. The key figure stands at 4.5 million shillings, and households rely on digital and TV radio transmission for news. Now, in the investment sector, fund managers increased to 45. Now, the Capital Markets Authority, CMA, has licensed 2 new fund managers, lifting the number of firms in the space to 45. Meridian Asset Management Limited and Swala Capital Limited are the latest licensees in the fund management business, which mirrors the growing demand for professional wealth and asset management services in the country. In the finance sector this morning, Treasury to tweak budget third time on revenue fall. The National Treasury will present the third supplementary estimates for the 2024-2025 budget, marking the first time the state's spending plan has been revised 3 times in a Croatian Mihik becomes latest technician to quit club. Since 2012, the Kenyan champions have cycled through a staggering 14 coaches. That story is augmented for you on page 34. On page 35 this morning about Europe League final. Europa League win could kickstart but future for Manchester United. Victory is worth 17.3 billion shillings to Manchester United and Recon's co-owner Ratcliffe. Red Devils put unbeaten European record on the line against Spurs at Bilbao today, kickoff from 10 p.m. Also, Bilbao fortifies for onslaught of English fans. Bilbao braces for the expected influx of more than 50,000 English football fans as Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United prepare to square off in the Europa League final today. Let's take a look at the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. It's all systems go for Kipkeino Classic Meet. 6th edition will be held at Ulinzi Sports Complex that needs upgrading. Government injects 300 million shillings to the event as Absa Bank announces a 60 million sponsorship. Also this morning, Mike Doty, record Safari Rally winner who returned to manage the iconic car race. During an interview with the Nation Sport at Fairest Home of the Old in Nairobi last October, Mike Doty, the most successful Safari Rally co-driver, stated his life's wishes. That's an obituary right there. And with that story, we come to the tail end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for choosing to watch the Morning Momentum right here on the best news television network in East and Central Africa. Keep watching Younib TV, ever the best. Our heartfelt gratitude also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens this morning has been Elias Muchina, and the chief controller has been Peninah Wachera. My name is Alphonce Ouma. See you on Friday, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Wednesday.